$50,000. And we did. We actually raised $63,000 by the end of that year. And so that was the beginning of the endowment fund. And we, of course, had to set up the legal documents for an endowment fund. And Les Sully, who had started the UNLV Foundation, was a wonderful attorney here who volunteered his time to help us set up the endowment fund. And we wanted to make sure that there was $250,000 principal in the endowment fund before we could start taking interest. Well, that's a long road for junior leaguers to get to $250,000, even though we got $60,000 the first year. So in that process, by the end of '96, we had our documents together, and the sustainer voted. Each sustainer had to vote to approve this endowment fund. And we set up the bylaws, which stipulated how the committee was to work, and the terms were 6 years, and there were 9 people at the beginning, 6 sustainers and 3 actives that sat on this endowment fund committee. And the rotation was such that there would always be someone with experience on the committee. So at that point, one of our goals had been to help the league with office space. And so being always interested in historic preservation, especially in Las Vegas, where most everything gets imploded, we found this wonderful home. It's a Whitehead house that was built in 1929. Do we have any pictures yet? Are we going to get any?
We're hoping.
Pictures. So this is the story of 2 houses. Not just the Morelli house, but we started with this beautiful Whitehead house. And it was a 2-story Mediterranean, gorgeous home that was built in 1929 on the corner of Mesquite and 7th Street, which is not too far from here. And so there was a hotel that wanted to build on that property and was going to demolish the house. And so when they found out we would like the house, they said, well, you can have the house, but you just have to move it. Well, we didn't have any money for a lot at that point. And so we talked to Jackie Gahn, and he said, well, I have a parking lot. You can move the house and put it on the parking lot until you get a lot. So this house was cut into 3 pieces, and Louise Helton really spearheaded this house project, and she went out and got the steel for Bland Ford, the moving company, to put under this house because it required this long length of steel. Now, if you think of the grant, and the first grant money that we got was $168,000. Well, we had found a lot down at 6th and Garces that was about $250,000, so we were short. The state decided that Eureka needed some money for their opera house and Austin for something, and so we didn't get enough. So here we had this house sitting on this property. Every year with the grant cycle, we didn't get quite enough to buy the lot. In the meantime, we lost that lot and acquired this lot here for, I think it was, I got it in my notes, $300,000. I should get my laptop out. And do you want to open that up and just put it? And we got the last of the grant cycle money from the state, and we had, I think we had like $380, and we needed $1,000 a month before the house was to be moved. The homeless got into it and burned it to the ground. Not to the ground, but it was just a total loss. And so you think we were a little bit disappointed. And that house had been sitting there. This was about, I think, 2000. And I couldn't afford it, and the police would drive by and keep saying the homeless are getting in there, and we boarded up. And so here we go. So it was July 22nd, 2000 that the house burned. And so you think we were a little discouraged? Now we started in '95, so this is 5 years later. junior leaguers don't get discouraged. Just go back to the drawing boards. In the meantime, there were a lot of members who were getting a little discouraged with this project because it was dragging on, it wasn't coming to fruition, and thought maybe this is, not a good idea. So in the meantime, after this burns down, we discover Steve Wynn is going to build a beautiful new resort on the Desert Inn Golf Course. And here are all these beautiful old homes that were built in the 60s that were going to be destroyed. So we found someone that knew about Kay Glenn's home, this Morelli house. It was built in 1959. And so about this home is that Mr. Morelli had been such a part of the early days of Las Vegas. You all know the history now. There's a beautiful booklet that Dee Dee and Sherry Colquitt and all of them have produced, and it gives the history of this house. But when we got ready to move the house, you think about the length of this house. We were able to move this house in one piece. And so you look at all these beautiful beams up here. If we had had to cut this house like we did the Whitehead house, it would have really been difficult to restore it. But they were able to move this house in one piece. Antonio Morelli had a studio built on that was on the front of the house, and that had to be sacrificed because it was all out of cinder block. And so we were able to save his studio. But pretty much the house was intact. If you could see these pictures, it looked pretty sad by the time they took it off the foundation and moved it. But this happened in September, so the Whitehead house burned in July, and we were able to move this house in September. So it was pretty exciting to get this house moved. And so by 2006, 2004 was the end of my term, and Sherry Colquitt took this chairmanship over. And by that time, the assets of the endowment fund, with the house and the land and the money we had raised, was pretty close to $1 million. Not too bad. So it was an exciting day, and I have to say that turning this house over to Sherry Colquitt and the new endowment committee, they have done an absolutely fabulous job of restoring it. And oh my God! Yay! So I want you to just quickly go back to after having begun this project in 1995. And do you think it was worth it?
Yes.
And Dee Dee was able to get all these beautiful furnishings from this mid-century modern furniture dealers. And you'll see that in the brochure. And so the credit goes to all the women who worked on this fabulous project. Just we're trying. We're getting to the pictures. You're touched. And so that money just keeps growing. And so when it reached, we said $250,000, then the interest from that principal can be used for the projects. But it provides that financial stability for the league, and we were concerned that at some point our charter might be in danger because of our financial situation. So the endowment provides that stability. That money always has to be there, it can never be